We're thrilled tonight to welcome Scarborough resident Tim Fahey to the library. Tim is in the library's meeting room. I'm here at the reference desk, and Lucy's in the back room, so we're all spread out here, but sort of at the library together. Tim grew up in a large family outside of Boston. He graduated from Belmont High School in Holy Cross and earned his MBA from Boston University. After years spent in Manhattan, Cambridge, and Connecticut, as he describes it, he came to his senses and moved to Maine. We're thrilled to welcome him here tonight to share with us his bicycle journey from Anacortes in Washington State to Scarborough, Maine. Tim chronicled this journey in his book, The Fun Mover Chronicles. Tim's going to give us an overview of his trip and share beautiful photos that he took along the way. Then he and Lucy will have a conversation about the trip and what spurred him to embark on such a journey. He's going to answer questions that some of you have already submitted. And if anyone else has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat through Zoom, and we'll try to answer those as well. So please, everyone, help me give a virtual welcome to Tim Fahey.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much for that introduction. My name is Tim Fahey, and I did write this book, The Fun Mover Chronicles. I took the trip, it's unbelievable to me, over a half a decade ago, 6 years ago. I left for an adventure of a lifetime for me. Something that I would certainly hope that everyone would be able to do over the course of their lives at some point or other. And if you are planning to do it, plan to do it when you're 23 and not 53, because you get out of bed a little earlier, a little easier when you're 23 than 53. So it's true. I did 42. I biked across the country, 4,200 miles. It took me 72 days, and I started off with a buddy of mine for the first couple of weeks, and then he had a better offer as planned, and he left, and I went on to continue the route for 8 weeks and 2 days alone. And in a lot of ways, that's where the physical traumas of the trip kind of ended. I got stronger, and the real adventure that is traveling alone began. I crossed 11 states, and I brought a map in tonight. Washington, Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and then over to New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and then finally Maine. It was a long, long trek, and I took everything I needed. The saying is you travel with your bedroom and your kitchen, and I put everything on a bike, much like the one you see behind here. If I can move the camera, that's a touring bike. I'll get out of the way. That's essentially, this is a touring bike. It's not the one that I took, but it's very similar. It's got heavy frame, stock, very good wheels, and I have racks with panniers, that's saddlebags, front and back, and a handlebar bag. On the handlebar bag is a clear, you can't see it, but clear piece of plastic, and that's where you tuck your sectional maps in. I pedaled a very popular route. It's called the Northern Tier. It's right across, it bumps along the border with Canada, and then through those states I mentioned, and then up to Maine. So it's really the northern part. This is the trek I went along here, and down across here, across Lake Michigan, and then back down below Lake Huron, and I went a little into Canada, up to the north shore of Lake Erie, then into Buffalo, then across Buffalo, and then back into Scarborough. I started on May 16th, 2014, and I ended up on July 27th at 4:34 p.m., ankle deep in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean. Much like every other cross-country cyclist, they dip the back tire of their bicycle in the Pacific, and they don't stop until the front tire tastes the salty brine of the Atlantic. I can't tell you how how fun it was and difficult it was, and actually mentally challenging it was to continue to get on a piece of steel and pedal all day and eventually make my way back to my wife and son and our dog Daisy in Scarborough, Maine. It is the book I wrote is really a stitched together story of the memories that I wrote along the way on Facebook. I started kind of reporting into my wife with a picture and a little comment of what I had done that day. And I might have had her and a couple other people, but by the end of the trip, I had several hundred people enjoying the trip along with me. And it was just so much fun. I put a book together, and the sole purpose of this book is if you do have the willingness to read it, if I can make you laugh once, I've done my job. It's a thrill for me to bring some of the joy from the road into the minds of some of the readers. And there, Lucy wanted me to tell you, there's the book is available on paperback on Amazon, and I actually read it, so it's available on audiobook as well on Amazon and on ebook. And the cheapest way to get it is ebook, or if you're in town, just I'm an easy touch for a free book. So that's about the 10,000 foot view of the trip. What made it most exciting was the people I met along the way, all of them randomly, at either convenience stores or campgrounds or some of the hotels I stayed at, or if I just asked the directions of people. But the human interchange, so desperately lacking in these COVID times, really was ripe with, the whole thing was ripe with serendipity and a real joy for me of meeting other people. It seems like a world away now in the craziness that we all face now as a society and a country, but gee whiz, 2014 was simpler times. But I did it at 53, I think as a kind of a way for me to process my grief. My parents had died within a year of each other. My mother horribly from ALS, and that was a long, slow, horrible struggle for her. And I think it was something I've always wanted to do, and I processed my grief throughout the trip, and I was feeling ever brighter and brighter and brighter toward the end of the trip. A magnificent experience. So that's encapsulates the basic story of the trip.
That's wonderful. Tim, thank you. And Tim has shared an album of photography that he took along the way. Many of these images, I'm imagining that he shared on Facebook for Eileen and others. And so we thought that what we would do first would be to just go through the album and have you remark a little bit about the images, and that may actually spark some questions for people. And I do have some questions already for you. You've answered a couple of them already, like why did you embark upon the journey? And it was quite a journey. So I know the answer to that question is a longer answer. But what I'm going to do now is share my screen, and so people can see these images. Okay.
There we go.
And here we go. So we're really glad to have you here with us, Tim, to hear about this book that you wrote and the trip that you took.
That's a good image. As I got closer and closer, well, I didn't want to leave until my mother was gone, and then she passed away on my birthday in early April, and I kind of wanted to get going, and I was having a really tough time finding someone to go with, and I managed to find someone fairly randomly And it turns out that my partner in crime, Dave Walsh, he had walked the Appalachian Trail, and at the age of 26, he was a fine arts painter, and he was getting his MFA at Yale University. We were living in New Haven at the time, and I met Dave, and I told him that I'll pay for your beer and your food and your campsites if you just stay with me and help me get over the Rockies and in the flow of this biking touring thing. Dave had never bicycled himself, but as a through hiker for the Appalachian Trail, he was certainly Mr. Outside, and I was Mr. Inside. So it was a good matched set of skills. I'm not really sure what skills I brought, but perhaps tenacity. But the night before, what happens is you ship your bikes out to Anacortes, and you drop them off at the hotel you want to use as your first and only night, really as a base camp. You get out there and you assemble your bike and you buy the last few things. Well, featured on the bike I just showed you, there's a seat post clamp that it's like a cinch that you can raise and lower your seat post. And if you don't have that, your bike is fairly useless. Well, my seat post fell out of the shipping. So I was there the night before the trip without a seat post. And I managed to find one in a bike store, and next door to that was a kind of like an antique store. And I saw this picture of John Wayne, courage is being scared to death and saddling up anyway. That about covered it. That about covered it for me the night before. I'm like, what the heck am I doing? So I took that picture just as a kind of a memento of the feelings I felt the night before and the security I felt finally securing randomly a appropriately sized seat post. So things were all square, the equipment was ready to go, and I was too come May 16th, 2014. This is I'm not sure where this is exactly, but it must have been the first couple of weeks of the trip, because there's two bikes there, and one of them is Dave's, one is mine. And Dave, one of the things the skill that Dave really had was, boy, was he a good packer, and he knew exactly where everything was on his bike at all times. So if there was a need for, say, more suntan lotion or insect repellent, he knew he wouldn't even have to get his eyes off the road. He could just, find it with one hand and apply it and put it back in a deft way. I had to stop and unpack and repack nearly everything. He called me the packing princess because I really had to go through every damn bag. As you'll see, all the bags are yellow that I have, and there are two big ones and two small ones. And for a guy who can't find his car keys every morning, that was a complex situation. So I ended up just going through everything to get anything. And it was really kind of a pain. But that's typical. We had terrific weather. I had terrific weather, but most of the time. I don't even think it rained on Dave more than once when he was there the first 2 weeks. But that's a campsite. Typical, you rent a tent space, and that's what they give you. It's just a spot in the dirt with a picnic table. And you'll be lucky if it's clean. Oftentimes there are communal showers or communal bathrooms, and that's all you get. But it's inexpensive. It's probably the most inexpensive way to go because you're not paying for gasoline or insurance or oil or maintenance or anything. Well, a little bit of maintenance on the bike, but that's what you pay for and that's what you get. So that's a look at a typical campsite. The road. That was from Anacortes, Washington to the foothills of the Rockies. There are 90 miles of essentially flat land. It's paved beautifully, it's forested wonderfully, and you get these long stretches of open road like that. What you're looking at there is a beautiful road. It's a two-laner with a very, very wide shoulder. That's kind of a real dream for the cycling tourist. Worth mention is the maps I used were for all 4,200 miles. It was a predetermined route that had roads that were pre-screened as bike-friendly and interesting, both visually and as adventure cycling company or adventure cycling folks print these maps, and it's called the Adventure Cycling Association. It's ACA.com. You can buy yourself maps. They've got about 50,000 miles of maps, predetermined to be low population density areas as best they can, the best road conditions, and they have all the services town by town. So the maps were a true resource. I didn't use GPS. I went old school, and I was happy for it. So the fewer interludes you can have with electronic devices on a bicycle touring trip, the better off you are. There's a certain rhythm to the road, and it needs a little bit of quiet without interruption. So that's a typical road. The first 90 miles was just gorgeous, and that's the typical road. More of the same, more of the same. And interestingly, before you leave that picture, you'll see the power lines striping the sky there. I noticed across the states just how evident the huge network of the grid is on our country, and how important it is to our country in every aspect of it. And it's just unbelievable what the people did who came before us in terms of wiring that. I mean, can you imagine? They had to clear the land, make the road, build the towers, string the towers, make the wire. I mean, it's unbelievable. But the grid is everywhere, and it does mar some of the vistas that are so naturally beautiful. The Rockies. That was my first kind of introduction. You'll notice the snow. You'll notice the darkness of the shadow. It was cold, really cold. And the air mass is kept like, you know how a hot butter fills the nooks and crannies of an English muffin? Well, let me tell you something. Cold air fills the nooks and crannies of the Rocky Mountains. And it's best to start as late as you can, because it takes a little bit of time to warm up. Another beautiful view. I mean, just about every single second of my trip while on the bike was a picture postcard. I mean, I rolled through the most beautiful places. Washington State, Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, and Minnesota and Wisconsin were stunning. To an East Coaster like myself, I got a kind of a dose of the varsity level of mountains, but the drama was well worth every turn of a pedal. I mean, incredible. I'm repeating myself, but I can't underscore enough just how beautiful our country is, and how worthwhile the quote-unquote flyover states are worth visiting and spending a lot of time. There's Dave in all his beauty. Big old Dave. He is a great guy and just a real troubadour. That was us on a sunny day, and he's got, as you see, he's got a little rack, and he didn't have as much stuff as I did. And right from the get-go, that was a huge advantage. Weight was an issue. Personally, I weighed 178 the very day at the start, and I weighed 158 at the end of my journey. And my bike was 27 pounds bare naked, and fully loaded. It was towards 70 at the beginning, and by the ending, I was, I got it down to about 45, or maybe even something like maybe 50 pounds. But it turns out I hauled truly too much stuff over those Rocky Mountains, exacerbating the problem. And weight was a real issue, and I learned to be lean and mean throughout the journey. I kept on jettisoning luggage and going to a post office and just putting extra stuff in a box and sending it home. That's a place that's actually that's our first hotel stay, actually. And that's in Washington, just after the first couple of climbs. And water, rivers and water are everywhere along the northern tier. And it was in that room that Dave found out that he, as a Yale student, one of his professors had secured him a residency for a month in Scotland for drawing. So he left that hotel, and well, we stayed together a couple more days, but that's where he got the news. His July wasn't going to be bicycling and doing research in Yosemite on land. He was a landscape painter. He wasn't going to be doing research in Yosemite. He was going to be doing research in Scotland. This, for those who are unfamiliar, is a elevation profile, part of the maps that include elevation profiles when needed. The maps, again, are a terrific resource of what you're going to face ahead. And this was our fourth day of riding, and the elevation profile of the Rainy Pass and Washington Pass was absolutely brutal. I think I was on the road for 12 or 13 hours that day. All we had to do was bike 50 miles. But you'll see on the left side, that day was an adventure in itself. The left side of that, I picture a little picture of a guy pushing a bicycle up that hill. That's what I was doing most of that day. And then the thing is that Dave and I figured out, actually Dave said, hey, look, we're both new at this. Let's start with 30 miles a day. We'll do 30 miles a day. And by the time the fourth day happens, we'll be, quote unquote, ready for Rainy Pass and Washington Pass. A double dip in summiting for the fourth day. I was exhausted by the end of the third day and didn't really get my battery back until probably 3 weeks later. But that elevation gives you an idea. I describe it in my book as it was just a series of witches' hats and traffic cones standing shoulder to shoulder. And that's exactly what it was. By the time we got down to, we actually didn't reach Mazama. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. We camped like at the third available campsite on the other side. And let me tell you something, that descent was so incredibly scary. Those dark shadows that were featured in a couple of photos ago, yeah, they were stretching across the road and linking fingers, dovetailing into complete darkness. And it was really cold. I had everything I had on my bicycle in terms of clothing on my body. And we found our campsite at twilight and made quick work of getting into a tent and eating some ramen noodles and going to sleep. And I woke up to like 38-degree temperature and I froze all night. That was a tough pull right there. That was 4 days into it. That was my kind of education on just how in over my head I was. Another stretch of beautiful road. I think that was between passes, certainly after Rainy Pass and Washington Pass. As you can see, there are some mountains ahead. So there are some mountains ahead. More landscape, just drama from the road. It might get old for you guys, but it never gets old for me. Again, a good road, good conditions, a fairly wide shoulder, and in this shot, it's free of roadkill. A beautiful river. I might have another picture of it, but it was just a bridge that I was extremely tempted to jump off of. It's for a little cooling water, but it was just a particularly beautiful estuary. I thought the skyscape behind it was kind of beautiful. Another road. Who knew on a bike trip, huh? Crazy, right? That was a particularly scenic stretch of road, but particularly brutal. I think that might have been, we're kind of messing up the chronological order of this as I supplied these photos in a certain order, but I probably screwed up. I think this was early in the day on the way to over Rainy Washington Pass. But that's just a foothill. You can't see the grade, but that was a walking stop. Just another beautiful body of water that I forgot the name of. It might be Libby Dam. It might be a picture of Libby Dam. That campfire some camping places have fire pits, and this one had actually a fire kind of cauldron. And you can't, when you're cold and you've got everything on, and you can't get your hands close enough to the fire. And then you wonder why your backside is freezing when the fire's right there. But you just kind of, you rotate yourself like a gas station hot dog on one of those rollers. You're just trying to keep warm. There's an action photo of Dave making some, looks like he's making some breakfast there. Yeah, some oatmeal. That's my tent in the background. Dave's is the one that's kind of green, closer. And again, that's what you get. You get a picnic table and a stretch of dirt. That's Dave ahead, and that's the Rockies ahead as well. That's probably early on in the. I was a little trigger happy with my camera, just because I was just wowed by the picturesque beauty of that whole region of the country. If you haven't been out there, even on a car trip, I'm sure it'll be beautiful. Quite stunning. And this is a picture I took. It's of 3 roads, and I thought it was interesting. It's the river, and then it's a dirt road over there to the left, and then on the other side of it is a train track. And I just thought of how Mother Nature carves out a transportation system that kind of man has kind of put shoulders on, a train and a car, 3 roads. That's definitely Libby Dam, and that is a enticing stretch of road. Someone asked once if I would go again, and I would go to, my wife gave me the pass, I would go again tomorrow. It's a great way to see the world and to have an adventure and to get in unbelievably good shape and to have a lot of laughs and smiles along the way. And to meet some pretty cool people, which we'll get into probably a little later on. That is Montana, I believe. And that one, I think we were going through, I forgot the name of the park, Glacier National Park. That's what it was. And this was a particularly good day. And there's another. That's leaving the Rockies. As wide open as these roads are, there's very little traffic. And again, it's the best part of the trip. The fewer the cars, the better the day. That's once again after the Rockies and getting into the plains, American plains, Western plains. There's the grid again. It's always there. This is in a little town in eastern Montana, and the architecture I thought was interesting, and some artists had just done that mural, but their peekaboo behind it is that grid. Spoke of. There's your famous author with a t-shirt that's too short and too tight. I had gone into a place called Cut Bank, and I got a haircut that I will forever regret. It's a crew cut, but the lady just cut me up pretty good. But that is a municipal park outside of Harve, Montana, H-A-R-V-E, Harve, Montana. And it's about 1,000, I think it's like 1,330 acres of the most picturesque, beautiful land you've ever seen. And some folks were fortunate enough to have great-grandfathers build houses in those little nooks. And the houses are still private. And they're beautiful. They're quiet, middle of nowhere, and they're just great little retreats. There's not a lot of them, but there's a couple I saw on the way. Went for a hike with that was my first experience with a thing called Warm Showers. And Warm Showers is this online community that links hosts to bicycle travelers and bicycle travelers to hosts. And you put down your profile, and you might not like cats. I don't like cats. And you might say I've got a need for maybe a tent, a spot, or I'll be happy to stay in your garage or that kind of thing. And then people will say, you can stay here if you're traveling through. Well, I called up one person, and I regretted the stay. After pedaling, I think it was 80 miles, I arrived at the door of her house, and she said her boyfriend wasn't there. They were going to go for a 3-hour hike, and did I want to come? And she offered me, and she had a cat. and she offered me yesterday's remnants of dinner. I didn't know, I was stupid and I should just turn on my heels and get the hell out of there, but I stayed the night and I shared the room with a cat. And hilarity ensued if you read the book. I hope I haven't offended the cat people. Up another road, another grid. Oh, you see, real quick, the those little bumps, they warn drivers that if they're falling asleep. Those little rumble strips, boy, those are the worst thing for a bicycling tourist. They're almost violent. It's crazy. You want to avoid those at all costs. A beautiful, beautiful river just outside of Concrete, Washington. Just beautiful. Here's the famous author after having just repaired a flat tire. Two people in a gold minivan pulled over to give me help, but I was already 90% done. And the lady, her husband from Scranton, he was an avid cyclist, so he helped me true my tire, and he finished up while she took a picture of me. And I wanted to have documentation that I actually did bicycle across the state, and I wasn't just living in a hotel room in New Jersey making all this stuff up. That's the Fun Mover, the original. It's an independent fabrication bike that I bought, and it didn't really fit me as well as it could have, and that led to kind of repetitive stress injury in my leg and my back. But I got used to it, and I made some fine adjustments, and after a while, I did with what I could with the equipment. And I was, prior to my bicycle trip, I had been plagued by lower back problems, and they are gone, and they have been gone ever since I ended the trip. Bicycling is the Viking Cafe. It's the best omelet in Minnesota. And if you get there before 11 o'clock, maybe you'll taste it. Guess what? I got there 11:06, and they wouldn't serve it up to me. So one day I'll go back to the Viking Cafe on time and challenge them to see just how good their omelet is. But I'll tell you right now, I had a delicious BLT with some fries and a chocolate shake. And then I had a burger too. You eat a lot, and you eat with reckless abandon when you're on a bicycle trip. You can eat anything. Well, I'm a healthy guy. You can eat anything you want. You can't eat really crappy food, but almost everything and anything is on the menu. Just a silo, and I noticed how how much agriculture is involved in our country. Just these old farms are everywhere, and they're noble, they're beautiful, and they're falling apart. That's outside of that's a dam that is close to Reef Buffalo, and it was a really rainy spring. I had the weirdest weather. I was experiencing near drought as I pedaled, but there were reports that there was rain way ahead of me, and I didn't see much of it. But that's the offflow from the rain. This is a beautiful little bike trail that that was just outside of Presque Isle in Presque Isle in Montana. I think that's where it is. And I get the M states messed up, whether it's Montana or M or W, Montana or Washington. Anyway, this is a beautiful, silky smooth bike trail that was just made, and that's the trail that I rode on outside of Presque Isle, away from Dean and Bill Kanan, who had saved me the night before from a mosquito-filled camping experience. again, that's detailed in the book. Their generosity is well documented, and the fact that they saved me from literally a night of squalor was, to this day, still appreciated, 6 years later. There's a cow. It's an ice cream store. I have a logo. And I walked, one of my rules across the states was you pull over for ice cream every chance you get. So I went ahead and I pulled in, and there was a pile there. And I went ahead inside, and I did my good deed for the day. I bought 6 nuns ice cream. And, I was, hopefully closer to God at that point. But that's the cow outside the store. Okay, 2 cents to anybody who can name this place. That is not Miami Beach, although it does look like it. That view of the Great Lake of, Lake Michigan blew me away. Holy smokes, what a day. There was even waves. The wind was up, and I wish I did, but I didn't. Because it takes a little effort to basically get all your stuff off. I mean, you lube up with the sunscreen and everything, and you put on your bike shorts, which are not complimentary to anyone. And you throw on some nylon shorts on top of those, and you put your socks on, and your cleats on, and your helmet, and your gloves, and I wore sleeves, neoprene sleeves, basically to prevent the bugs from getting at me and the sun from getting at my skin. And so it would be a fairly arduous task to kind of basically get stripped down to go into the water. But man, what a view, what colors, what beauty. I understand why people are drawn to that huge freshwater source. I had the the delightful opportunity to be, there's the grid again. I had the delightful opportunity to see weather patterns from my bicycle seat. One of the things I miss every day is the sweeping views that the Midwest and the plains give you. There's a pretty good road. No cars, forested on both sides, and the shoulder is wide enough to give you a little sense of peace. Cars travel way too fast they pass they pass way too close, I should say. Sometimes I almost got killed 3 times going across the state. That's another question. I had a couple of near-miss experiences that really scared the heck out of me. Totally and completely unnecessary. I was not being irresponsible. I was not even in the lane. But people, for some reason, don't give bicyclists the buoy room that they deserve. And it was pretty scary. But it was on a road much like this, on the downhill, structured this way, the double lane, little shoulder, couple of, that's where I saw the bear. And I saw the bear in East Glacier Park, and it was a grizzly bear, and it scared the heck out of me. I went from, this is terrific on a downhill ride on a beautiful day, to stopping and being about 80 yards from a grizzly that walked across the road. And he looked at me, took a couple of steps, but I was definitely on the very, very bottom of the food chain, and that's not a very comfortable place to be. I didn't have a gun and didn't have nothing I could defend myself with. But fortunately, the bear was, like most people, not interested in me, and it moved on. That's an Appalachian Trail picture I got for Dave, because my friend Dave, long gone now from the trip, had walked that very step across that road. Our paths crossed long after he left. Oh wow, that's it. I thought I'd have a couple more pictures, but that's fine. A good adventure.
If Tim were delivering his talk in person here at the library, he would have books to sell And
Oh, yeah.
so one of the downsides of the of a virtual talk is that it's not possible to buy a book, but we would be happy to lend you his book. It's here in our collection at the library, and it's also available on Amazon. So we want to make sure that you know that, and so that you can read some of the funny anecdotes that um, he has shared in the book. And now, Tim, we have gotten some questions, and we've gotten some questions in the chat, and we got some ahead of time. But I'm looking at the time here. It's about 7:13, so we definitely have a few minutes where we could ask you a couple more things if you're up for it.
Sure.
Um,
I keep my answer short so we can rip through some of these questions.
Well, one question to kick off with comes from our library director, Nancy Crowell, who wants to know, for Appalachian Trail hikers, there are stops that provide support along the way. Did your route include through rider support spots or quote unquote trail magic?
There was definitely trail magic throughout the trip in terms of trail angels showing up when they were desired. Or were actually not desired, but actually needed. There were, to answer your question, not as much as the Appalachian Trail. The Appalachian Trail is more highly populated, and there's a lot of people. It's a marching parade of people who need a shower, and it's a marching parade of people who are hungry. And the bicycle support system is already it's already provided in the infrastructure of our nation. There are convenience stores and camping places. However, there was a lady who in 1973, not on the northern tier, but in 1976, she hosted one group of people, and she made them cookies. And for 40 years, she became the cookie lady and a destination for food travelers on a different route. So, and there was, on the northern tier, there was a place that it was called the Brown Barn, and that was a kind of an unofficial stopping point and support oasis for cyclists.
Interesting. You mentioned your encounter with a bear. In Scarborough, we have so many people who appreciate the out of doors and the land. And I had a question about other animals that you saw along the trip.
Yeah, I saw, that was the most threatening animal for sure. But I saw, gee whiz, a fox, coyote, wolf. I didn't see a wolf, I heard him though. I saw a bear, like I said, all kinds of birds, and I saw them all either alive or dead. I saw mountain goats, but I did see a lot of, I saw snakes, a bull snake, a rattler. They were dead. So, I mean, really, reptiles, flying objects, and mammals all throughout the whole thing. The wildlife is definitely there. And I'll tell you right now, in some of those places I camped in, there was, I don't know what the heck they were, what kind of animal they were, but there was some pretty scary sounds coming out of those woods at night.
And the animals that were roadkill, did you encounter any differences in the type of roadkill or amount of roadkill from state to state?
Interesting question. Yeah, I did. Strangely, it wasn't that notable, but the first couple of states, Washington, Montana, and Idaho, and actually North Dakota, they had a pretty good amount of roadkill. But I couldn't believe, like, birds. I saw birds, like, carcasses of birds on these beautiful open roads, middle of nowhere. They got whacked by cars. And I never saw a bat. Never saw a bat roadkill, which is if they're blind.
Interesting. I had a question about the mental aspect of the trip for you.
Yeah.
And how how you did it, how you persevered.
Well, I gave myself an advantage from the start. I was going, with every turn of the pedals, I was getting closer to home, my wife and child. And That was hugely beneficial. I didn't want to pedal that hard and that far just to catch a plane somewhere back home. So I went from west to east. That was huge. Also, it was very difficult. It's an endurance challenge, but the Marines have a term for it. When you're on a bike and you're wrestling headwinds in North Dakota that are 30 knots in your face, and then you turn 90 degrees and it's 30 knots in your face, and then you turn another 90 degrees and it's such a mind challenge that it's difficult. And over the course of the hours, you realize that, gee whiz, I've only gone 4.5 miles in the last hour, and I've got 36 to go. You do the quick math, and you're looking at a long, long day. And if you've already been on the road for several hours, you're looking at, will I ever get to this place by nightfall or even after? So the Marines call it, they're faced with arduous situations as well. And they just say, embrace the suck. And for me, I came to my own terms with embracing the suck in terms of this headwind that was killing me. Once I accepted it as part of the landscape, it was no easier to pedal, but my mind and my anxiety and my constant wishing of, wouldn't it be great if this thing stopped? I just stopped putting the energy into that. I just accepted it and I rolled on. And it really, it was like from one pedal rotation to the other, a light bulb went on in my mind, and then boom, all the anxiety and all the stress and all the frustration and the anger left. They just got swept away with that wind, and it was much better. Embracing the suck, good idea for a long trip.
Sounds like a definite takeaway from the trip. Were there other things as part of the mental game that you took away from this journey?
Yes, using humor as a defense against the darkness is huge. When you're all busted up, if you can't crack a smile and share something with somebody, even a bad joke, you're done for. You'll snap like a twig. You just got to keep that smile across your face and go on. Really, that's the secret.
Another question was about, and then we've had one come in too, a couple from the chat. One question that came in was about the best moments of the trip, the very high moments that you had.
One that comes to mind was the last mile I pedaled was with my son. He had gotten a couple of his buddies and gone on a scouting mission to see if he could see me coming down the road, and he did. And that last mile was euphoric. It was fantastic. He was about 11 at the time, or 10, and he's pedaling right alongside with me, and just his company and the anticipation of seeing Eileen again, and then having the beach right there was great. That was a highlight. Another highlight that came to mind was it was a long day. It was one of my century rides. I had 5 of those. That is, you pedal over 100 miles in a day, and I was late. It was like about 9:30 at night, and I did not like to travel at night because I didn't want to get hit by a car. Drunk driving is a big problem in Montana. You'll know that when you see at a convenience store a convertible full of kids go in and everyone orders 3 Bloody Marys and walks out and puts it in their car and then drives away. Like they kind of endorse drinking and driving. It's the highest drinking and driving fatality state in the country. So when you add darkness to that, it's a challenge. But the best ride was, for me, I was coming into I was in Wisconsin, and I was coming into Manitowoc, and it was around July 4th or thereabouts. There was some extra fireworks that the municipalities decided to discharge that evening, and it was twilight. It was warm, and I asked a guy directions, and he said, I said, I'm trying to get to this location of a hotel or a city, and he said, well, you can go straight, but if I were you, I'd take the 3rd left, And now that'll get you, you'll go by all these used car dealerships. It ain't pretty, but that'll get you straight into town. There's a hotel strip down that way. And I was 15 miles away. I had been pushing a headwind all day. The wind's kind of calmed, but they were still blowing. And I took a left. The winds were suddenly behind me. I had 15 miles they must have paved that road that morning. It was incredibly smooth, and it was the lights of the city laid straight ahead, and above them were plumes of fireworks welcoming your author into that city. It was absolutely magical, and that last hour of riding was just unbelievable. That was a highlight for sure.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
We have a question from Vicky who wants to know how you crossed the lake.
Oh, I took a boat, and that morning after I bought those nuns the ice cream, I was all feeling good about myself. So I gave myself a treat. There's a ferry, lasts about an hour and a half, that gets from Manitowoc to Ludington, Michigan, and there's a ferry that goes across. So that's how I did it. I want to reassure Vicky I can't walk on water. People know, but yeah, the ferry was great, and I put the extra bucks into a room. And so I laid down, I took a little nap, and it was unbelievably good. Nap when you can.
And a couple questions from Eileen. How about dogs? Any dogs chase you?
I had one dog that scared the crap out of me. I was with Dave. We were pedaling along, once again, another idyllic road, and we passed what we thought was an abandoned trailer, and the dog of World War II, the dog from hell, came ripping around, and we just had to giddy up real quick, and it just missed getting Dave, and then we pedaled for about a mile, and I was exhausted. I had suffered a hamstring pull, and I almost ruptured. I tore it, and I almost ruptured it. Until that, a couple of days before, and I was in real pain. So that quick acceleration really, really, really got me close to doing something stupid. And we stopped, and then the same damn dog, it followed us for a mile, and I turned around, just happened to look at where it was, and we had to accelerate again. So, but that was the closest a dog got to us. But dogs are really, really, really a problem in some of the more rural, economically challenged places, because people they don't care. They let their dogs roam free. And the dogs their favorite pastime is scaring the heck out of cyclists.
And you talked about the highlights of the trip a little while ago. This next question from Eileen, it is more about the lows of the trip. Were you ever worried that you wouldn't make it?
Never. Didn't even enter my mind. I was going to make it. I mean, no doubt. No, there's no way I wasn't going to go. Get home on
That's a fabulous mindset. And the last question from her that gets at some of the interactions that you had with people along the way. Did anyone help you? And in a situation that would have been a disaster if they hadn't helped you?
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. I talked really briefly about, someone said trail magic, and I said trail angels. Trail angels is a term of someone who you come across randomly, just in the nick of time, just for what you need, and then they're gone. I was going up rainy path. I didn't manage my water at all. I learned that from Dave and from experience. But I had a Camelback with 2.5 liters, and I had like 2 water bottles. And every chance you get, you fill up. Well, on the 4th day, it's 55 or 56 miles of 0 services. So whatever you've got, that's what you get. And I blew through my water too soon that day, and I was bonking is a term, is when you become dehydrated and you get kind of dizzy in your head and you're full of exercise and you don't do it right. I was bonking about 2 miles before the summit of the Washington Pass. It was 7:30 at night. It was cold. I was losing my balance a little bit. I couldn't talk because my tongue was like I was wearing 2 pairs of athletic socks. It was really milky, and And there was a car. I just got off my bike. I was pushing it. I just dropped my bike. And I went and I crossed my arms in front of this car. The lady stopped. She said, "What's the problem?" I said, I think I need some water. And she says, "Oh, no problem." She gets out of her car and she's got a 5-gallon jug of water with which I used to fill up my canteen. Dave used to refill his. And I had some water and I got my feet back under me. And I summited Washington Pass with her help for that water. Then she left. And she said something like, "I never drive up here without a lot of water, just in case I get stuck." Like, wow. So that was a trail angel, and that was the example of someone showing up with exactly what I needed. On the descent, if I didn't have all my clothing on, and if I didn't have water, I would have definitely, I believe, fallen or done something stupid. And then there you are. Now it's 8 o'clock at night. The car stopped coming. You've fallen. You hurt yourself. You're in the middle of nowhere. So she really came through. And I used that water to make Ramadan noodles that night.
That's great. We have a comment and we have another question. The comment's from Julie, who says, "I thoroughly enjoyed reading your book, Tim. Thanks for sharing your experience. Love your sense of humor. I laughed out loud while reading."
Thank you,
And
Julie.
and a question from Sandy. "What training did you do for the trip? Did you ride every day?
Sure.
And did weather ever shut you down?"
I didn't do any training for the trip. There's a humorous discussion, or humorous, at least an attempted humorous description of. I took one spin class I took one spin class to physically prepare for the trip across the United States, and I figured I was good to go from there. I did not prepare physically. I certainly should have. I should have at least taken a few shakedown tours that would have made me realize I was ill-fitted for the bike, and really prevented some of the mistakes I made as a newbie bicycle tourist. And my mistakes that I made were fully accentuated by the challenge of the Rocky Mountains. So what was the second part of Sandy's question?
Did weather ever shut you down?
No, no. On a bike, when it rains, you get wet, and that was I had really unbelievable weather. I would get caught in rainstorms, but when I was ready for what they call a zero, if I was comfortable and cozy in a hotel room or in my tent, and it was going to rain that day or be extra cold, I might take a zero, and the bad weather might tilt the decision to take a zero.
Well, and another comment, "Kathy just bought your book on Amazon and is really looking forward to reading it."
Oh, Kathy, I hope you like it. And I hope that I hope I can curl a laugh out of you, because I really do. I had such a good time that I wanted to share it, and if I can make someone laugh, I'm delighted.
And are there any other questions from anyone? I have one other one that came in ahead of time about being in nature so closely, and you've used the word rolling through down the road now, but the question is really about what's it like to be so close to the landscape.
It was great, but physically, I mean, it didn't dawn on me, but I'm outdoors all the time. I mean, I was outdoors. I think I was out. I mean, Dave, at the age of 26, had already spent 450 days of his life outdoors, camping in summer camps, or fishing, or guiding, or Appalachian Trail stuff. I was outside all the time. So what's so great about cycling is that when you go down into a dip, you feel the temperature change. When it's foggy, you feel the fog on your face. When it's hot, you feel the heat. You smell the barbecue from 3 blocks away, because the smells are incredible. Sometimes they're good smells, sometimes they're horrible smells if you pass a carcass of a deer or something like that. Or hog farms. Don't ever be downwind of hog farms, ever. But being outside and close to nature was really great. And for a fellow who was trying to shake the sadness of the loss of his parents off, it could not have been a better incubator for bubbling up of better times or better spirits. I used it as a battery. I can't imagine trying to wrestle grief away in a city. I don't know what I would do.
Well, we don't have other questions that have come in, and it's just about 7:30 now, so I think that we can think about wrapping up, Tim. Thank you so much for talking about your journey, about the adventure, and about the book. We're very excited to have Scarborough author come and talk about his work, and so we really appreciate you doing that. So on behalf of the library, we thank you, and we also thank all the participants who came today. The Armchair Traveler series is a pretty popular series. We've had some wonderful presenters talk about their journeys, and Tim has been a great addition to that group of people. So we will be planning some more virtual programming in the Armchair Traveler series because it's a great way to travel these days.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah. So thank you very much,
Thank
everyone.
you, Tim. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Bye-bye. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea.
Great show, Tim. Thanks.
Thank you.
Amazing. You still have the fun machine? I'd like to take a close look at it.
Oh, anytime. It's the best thing
There it
ever.
is.
Yeah.
It's hanging on the wall, right? And you never use it anymore?
Yeah. No,
Nothing but,
I'll come by my house. I'll show you.
okay, I'll be by.
Okay.
It's great to see you. Thanks.
We'll see you too, Sadie. See you.
Okay.
Um,